Well, Stephanie James, I am so excited to have you on this webinar series. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here.
Well, I thought that the your newest book that you've written, yeah, that one just fits so perfectly into what cancer patients need, as they're diagnosed. Here they're facing something, it's their biggest challenge in their life. They're fighting for their life, and to need to be able to shift that more into becoming a victory. So, your book, Becoming Fierce, Creating a Bold and Beautiful Life. I mean, it sounds almost like when you're dealing with cancer, how can I do that? But it's at that time that you need it the most. So tell me a little bit how. I'm diagnosed with cancer. Here I'm faced with this horrendous thought that I may die. You're just staring, death. That's the biggest fear that we have. How can we shift that towards becoming a bold and beautiful life?
Yes, such a great question. And I can speak to this from some experience. Now, not being diagnosed with full-blown cancer. However, I think it's been about 8 years ago, I was diagnosed. I had pre-cancerous cells on my cervix. And so I had to undergo 6 weeks of treatment where once a week I would come in and they would put a certain activating cream, on my cervix. I had to stay inverted, tipped upside down for 30 minutes. And I remember the doctors telling me, sometimes people have to stop this treatment because it becomes very painful. There's definitely side effects. And the first 2 treatments, I was like, I've got this. This is cake. I don't feel anything. And the third treatment, oh my gosh, I mean, I was nauseous. I was sick. I was wiped out energetically for a week, and I needed to take 2 weeks off at that point. And when I came back for the next treatment, it was the same thing. And I was really having a lot of anxiety and I don't want to go back for the next treatment because I just started to feel better the day before. And then here we go in for another round. And what was interesting, Michael, is what happened at that point, because I was so angry I was having to deal with this. And I know, when we get those diagnoses or we have to deal with these things, so many different emotions come up. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to feel bad anymore. I don't want to feel sick. And so it was really interesting. I was up one night and it was about 3:00 in the morning. I got up, went to the restroom. And as I was walking back, it's like I heard this voice in my head that literally was like, you are making this worse on yourself than it has to be. And by resisting and by being like, no, I don't want this. And it's not like it's not about saying, oh, I'm thankful I have cancer. It's about accepting this is what's here. And how can I come to a place of peace with what's here? And when I stopped resisting, I remember going back to bed and I slept the best I had slept in months. And it was about this level of surrender and acceptance. So I think that's been a really powerful force in my life. And so oftentimes we'll think of surrender as actually, waving the white flag and maybe I'm being cowardice. It couldn't be further from the truth. Surrendering is one of the most courageous things we can do. And I'm not surrendering to, I'm going to be sick or, this is a death sentence, nothing like that. It's surrendering to, this is what's here now. And when I accept that and move into a place of peace, I can cultivate a mindset and a heart set where it's like, oh, and this, how do I make peace with my body? How do I make peace with my experience? And I honestly believe I was increasing my own pain by that tightness and that resistance. And when I was able to let that go, I could deal with it so much more easily. And literally the pain decreased.
And that is, I think a lot of people, when you're diagnosed and here you have your biggest battle, and that surrender and acceptance, exactly like what you're saying, you feel like is this a form of giving up, or am I just kind of sitting doing nothing? Am I Is that what surrendering mean? Do I allow cancer just to beat me because I'm surrendering? Because it's hard to shift away from that battle mind that I'm fighting something. I have cancer, I have to kill it, I have to go after it. So how do you shift? I mean, I know saying surrendering and acceptance it's yes, I understand that, but I'm so scared, so how do you create that shift within yourself?
Yeah, again, such a great question. I think one of the things that you just brought to mind is Sister Teresa saying, I will never go to a march on war. I'll go to a peace rally, but I won't go to something that's, fighting the war. And so I think there's something in that. It's like that fighting, even though we want that, becoming fierce is really about that passionate, ignited part of us. So yes, we're going to be driven to seek whatever treatment is best for our body. And, the surrender part, that is where it gets tricky, right? That in semantics, it's like, what does surrender mean? And so I think a piece of that is really getting to that place of, it's like when we accept this is what I have to deal with. And even if let's say we're getting chemotherapy, I've had clients that I've worked with going through cancer treatment and them saying, when I shift to a place of I am welcoming what's coming in, and I can look at that and I truly visualize, oh, these are my advocates. This, medicine or whatever is coming into my body, this is my advocates. This is the healing balm that's going to come through my body. And together we're going to co-create wellness. So it's shifting from a fighting mentality to, it's like, okay, this is a chance for me to get into a different mindset where it's like I'm co-creating with the divine. I'm co-creating health. I'm co-creating wellness. And when we get to that mindset, there really is a different sense of well-being that starts to take hold.
And I love that, because a lot of times, we're focusing on, chemo, obviously that's toxic. You don't feel good. People throw up. It messes with their stomach. They get neuropathy. They lose their hair. So you have the fear then of all the negative effects, and you're focusing on all the negative effects. But with that shift of mindset to really welcome, even though that it has all these side effects, to welcome this, and you can then reduce the amount of negative effect, and it becomes much more powerful if you are in line with the treatment, and you're allowing it to create wellness, like you're saying. I love that component. So with that, I mean, what I look upon cancer kind of as a loss of identity, meaning that the cells, they are going into that survival mode, because for whatever reason, they're not getting the oxygen, not getting the nutrients, the metabolism shifts. And so it's kind of, I look upon it as an individual that goes into that stress mode and focus, and goes into survival. And for us then to hold that energy, obviously will then feed that stress. So how can we nourish our own identity to reinforce the identity? I mean, usually there's some traumatic event or traumas or things that may be the underlying factor for that maybe the cancer appeared. Maybe, we're in a bad relationship, or maybe something happened in childhood, whatever it may be, but there's that kind of loss of identity. So how do we shift into reinforcing who we are, kind of igniting that spark within, like your first book, and kind of stepping in while we're dealing with these hardships into that, true strength of who I am?
Yes, beautiful question. I feel like the pandemic was one of those things that invited us to come within. Mm-hmm. We're all very, very programmed with external programs for happiness. And just by being a human being, that we think, oh, happiness is out here and acceptance is out here and validation I get out here. So it's interesting in the journey of cancer that it also is an invitation to come inside. And so it really is around getting that validation, even our sense of identity, because we're no longer a role. You know, when the pandemic hit, I had been so social before that, and my practice was thriving. I loved being able to, hug my clients and just have that contact, and all of a sudden no contact. All of a sudden no contact with anyone. And my partner, he lived in Seattle at the time. So, I literally had a relationship with my dog for over a year. And so in some ways, it was a loss also of that outward identity. And so I think that this journey, this cancer journey, does call us to come within and start that inner journey. And what I have found is that with myself as well, in my own experience, it's how are we aligned with whatever your sense is of higher power, your, whether we call it divine source, the universe, because that internal relationship is going to be what fortifies us through all of it. And I was thinking as you were talking about this loss of identity, I was remembering my Aunt Gwen, who at 46 had terminal breast cancer. And she had let it go. She had been first diagnosed at 41 and had not done a very active treatment. And so it had spread through her entire body. And so I remember when she was losing her hair, instead of making it the most horrible thing ever, she had this wisdom of like, come over to my house and I want you to shave my head. And we're going to put on, she loved Mozart. She's like, well, put on Mozart. And so we did it right in the middle of the living room, Mozart going, and started talking about the most peak experiences of our life. And so it made it something, it was almost like then it was ritualized into something like, these experiences that I've had, they're a part of me and they will continue to live within me. This is my identity, is not this, not my hair. It's not this external self. It's this right here. It's this alignment. So my sense is, and I'm not saying at all that this is easy. This isn't like we flip a switch and we're like, oh, I intellectualize this, so now I have this total new mindset and heart set. It's not that simple. And it's just like anything else, Michael, where we cultivate a practice. And so even in the mornings where we're noticing, yes, that fight or flight, that survival is kicking in, it's being very, very intentional about how we start our day. And even if it's for 10 minutes, coming into a place of meditation, coming into a place of mindfulness, and truly writing down those things that we're grateful for. And it might be very, very simplistic. Today, I'm thankful I woke up. Today, I'm thankful the sun is shining. And I'm thankful for every morning. I'm so deeply grateful for hot water because not everybody has it. Or just having a warm bed. So those are the things, as we start doing that, we know gratitude is the highest vibrating emotion that we have. And that it truly, as we focus on that, we start changing our neural pathways. The more that we focus on what we want to feel, want to create, is, this, what we focus on expands. And so that becomes an imperative part, I think, of us cultivating the mindset to get us through, to help us start establishing, okay, this is my new identity, and my new identity is really grounded within. And so this actually then ends up being cultivating this place of strength and inner knowing, where oftentimes the external is a diversion from this. So it can be one of the most powerful journeys of our lives.
And I hear that a lot of times from my cancer patients, is that cancer was my greatest teacher. It really put my back against the wall, and I had to look deeply into who I am. I had to kind of look at my life and exactly what you're saying, the gratitude. I had to find what it is that brings me joy. So I don't live a life that is meaningless, that I don't live a life where I'm living it for other people. I'm living it where it's heart-centered. I'm connected with who I am. And with that gratitude, like you're saying, it has the highest vibration. that you're bringing in, you're really recognizing what it is that brings you joy, and you're grateful that, and that will expand, and that way you will bring more and more of that, and that has such a physiological effect on you as well. I mean, because it programs your body for wellness, and it programs all the healthy cells to be stronger and be more resistant to being taken over by another identity, like the cancer that's trying to kind of shift your identity. So that ritualistic process, I mean, what does that look like for in a day? I mean, you're talking about, meditating. I mean, what are some other kind of rituals that people, and also, having a list, writing down what you're grateful for and doing that on a daily basis? Are there some other things that should be part of these rituals that you do in a day to kind of reinforce bringing joy, bringing heart-centeredness, and wellness?
Yes. Well, and I spoke about it in my first book. I think one of the imperative things are the bookends to our day. It's how we begin our day and it's how we end our day that are really essential, because both of those times of days, we're moving out of theta brainwave state in the morning, and we're moving into theta brainwave states in the evening. And that's when our brain is most susceptible to input. So if we're trying to carve out new neural pathways and have a new thought pattern really solidify, what we want to do is it's repetition, right? And I always use the example of, when we were 5 years old, we didn't know how to tie our shoes. That was something that was very, very intentional. We really had to focus and practice over and over and over again. Now we don't even have consciousness about it. We're not even thinking. We're having a conversation while we're tying our shoes, or we're multitasking. It's become assimilated. It's a part of who we are. And so the same is true for these practices. And we talked about having a morning practice, and that, I think, before you even get out of bed. And one of the things that I do too, the way that I start my morning, is putting one hand on my heart, one hand on my gut, and moving to that place of surrender. And I do that surrender practice, and I don't want to spend time talking about it, but literally from where the difficulties and most challenging things in my life have happened, where I've had to do that. And it's literally about saying there is some power greater than me that knows more than me, that can hold this in a way where I don't have to try to control things, where I can quit, having that strong resistance and creating the more pain in my life. So when I do that, I really get into a heart-centered place. I let everything go and say, I know today is in good hands. And then at the end of the day, I love this practice because it just is reinforcing everything we've done during the day, and our mindfulness practice in the morning. At night, I think what I encourage people to do, I think it's helpful to have a stationary object. So like a rock, or if you had something that was meaningful to you that you could hold in your hand and keep on your nightstand as a reminder to do this practice. And when I hold on to this rock that I have, I think to myself, what is the best thing that happened today? Now, it doesn't always have to be something that's phenomenal. Sometimes the best thing that happened is I sat in the sun for 15 minutes and just felt the sun on my face, and I just heard the birds singing. I mean, that's beautiful. And what you do is then bring all of your senses into that moment. What did I smell? What did I see? What did I hear? What did I touch? And then what you're doing is literally you're reinforcing those neural pathways, and by two things. First of all, because we have a natural negativity bias, our brain holds on to, like Velcro, negative experiences. And positive experiences are like two fried eggs on a Teflon pan. They just slide right out. So we want to give them some stickability. We want to say, okay, pay attention, brain. I'm going to marinate for a little bit on these good feelings. So we're telling our brain, listen up, pay attention. And then the beautiful thing is our mind experiences what we hold up in attention as happening now. So it's like we're experiencing that beautiful moment twofold. We get to experience it twice in that day. And then the way that our brain works, we have that reticular activating system that notices things. And that's a part of our brain that when we buy a new car, we're like, I'm the only one that has this car. And then pretty soon, everywhere we go, we're like, I see that car because we start to notice it. Well, once you start putting these really good things out at night, you're marinating on that literally for the next 7, 8, 9 hours in your subconscious mind. So your mind actually starts looking for those things. That reticular activating system's like, oh, that felt really good. Maybe that shows up again today. So that's what I would say would be a really helpful practice, really practicing those bookends to the day.
And then you will, there'll be more and more of those events, like you're mentioning. You're expanding what you're focusing on, and exactly what you're saying in the morning and the evening, because you're just shifting from the night sleep, and then also you're then shifting into night sleep in the evening. So your brain are kind of becoming more open and susceptible, and more easily rewired and reprogrammed. Forgot my point, but so the key, I think, is exactly that, to really kind of find what it is that brings you that joy, and your brain is kind of like in my therapy, we do what's called Rife technology, where we're using different frequencies, and these frequencies actually help to reprogram cancer cells. And they've seen these cancer cells to shift from cancerous to become normal. And it's just based upon frequencies. And we see that our nervous system is like the strongest, is like an innate Rife technology that we have. And by then shifting the frequencies that this nervous system is sending out and vibrating, it will then shift then these cells, these cancer cells, and have the ability to actually shift them to become more healthy. And so this becomes a really powerful practice, what you're doing. And I love it.
Thank you. I love hearing what you're doing. That just brings me so much hope, because I have such a deep belief in it, and I've seen it in my office. I've been in this career for 33 years and really working in the last 15 and a half years with trauma clients. And so seeing that shift in them when they come in, and, of course, oftentimes also have somatic complaints with that. Our mind and body are so connected. And watching that healing occur as they begin to heal. And exactly as you're saying, as they begin to raise their vibration. And we know now it's science, it's not some woo-woo theory, that our emotions, our thoughts hold certain frequencies. And so as we raise those, we're affecting the mitochondria, we're affecting the cells, and that true healing can take place. I mean, it has been one of the biggest joys of my entire life to witness other people's healing in that way.
And we are wired for survival. Like you're saying, the negative things, they stick to us. I mean, they're like Velcro, and for survival, we are trained to then always hold on to the fearful things, or things that threaten our lives, and so we can survive. The key is then to, like you're saying, is to be able, if we stay in that space, then we are attracting that energy. And so we need to really work hard. These good feelings, they don't just come because it's actually, it's hard work to shift from a negative, fearful space into that joyous, life purpose, where you have that spark within. It takes a lot of work, and it's really important that people then set aside time, just like you would exercise, like you would, all these other things. You require time and effort in order to be able to achieve, this joyous feeling, this space of gratitude, where you feel you have your life purpose, you know who you are and where you're going. And by having that life purpose, then you're shifting your body away from being a kind of a not permanent, impermanent, where you're towards moving towards death, so to say, which you look on cancer. And now you have a purpose, and you're driving towards still being here. And I see myself 20 years from now, 30 years from now, my grandkids are getting married, and all these things, and I get to be there.
Yeah. And when you talk about that, what I'm reminded of too is that one of the things that was very helpful for me is when I started understanding how frequency works in our emotions, And so there literally is a progression. It's not that you have to go from despair all the way up to joy and gratitude, because that can really be a huge leap, and how you will significantly feel better, even going from despair into anger. You know, that's such a higher vibrating emotion. And so I think it's important, as people are going through this journey, you will start to progress. And even, you know, it's like when you get to curiosity, that is such a much higher vibrating, like, wow, what are the possibilities here? Just holding that. You don't have to move into joy yet. And just as you have little glimpses of it, again, as you marinate on those experiences, or just the feeling of gratitude, which is the highest vibrating emotion, that's going to pull you up. That's going to pull people to a place where, oh, I am experiencing that sense of peace. So it's just being willing to move, even if it's this much, that is significant. And we do eventually get more and more, you know, higher frequencies as we move more and more up the scale.
And that's, again, that's kind of like exercising. You can't lift like a pro lifter immediately. I mean, you got to do it step by step, and as you continue on that journey, you're able to reach higher and higher levels. Do you mind kind of going through what that ladder looks like? Because I know a lot of people, they're afraid of like anger, and then they suppress it, push it, and then they move down the ladder into the despair or depression, or, you know, being paralyzed and you know, facing these kind of things. So as people kind of understand and observing themselves, not judging the state that they're in, but recognizing that they are moving towards a higher level, higher frequency of existence. Do you mind kind of going through what normal steps look like?
Well, and I think, I don't think there's, I have to tell you, a quote unquote normal.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
everyone's journey is going to be the same. And it's okay if we move up and down this ladder a little bit. That's normal human experience. And it is helpful when we know. So if you think about like despair or shame, very, very low frequency. And so if you think of that like being static, it's like a stagnant pond. Nothing is moving. No energy is moving. Okay. And you could think of anger, which is about midway, really, as like a tributary of fresh water coming in. And as that fresh water comes in, it stirs up all the dynamics. All of a sudden, we're in motion. That emotion is actually pulling us up into a higher state of being. Now, it's not that you want to stay at anger, but anger has a charge, right? They say anger and love are actually very close, you know, in what chemicals are being released in our body, but there's a charge, there's a fire. So I would say, as people notice, they're moving out of despair, shame, hopelessness, you know, they start moving up the ladder. So when they get to anger, to actually see that as a sign of, okay, that is like one of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, but it's moving towards acceptance. It's moving towards, oh, I'm alive. I have something here that now is going to shift me into, you know, peace and some of these higher vibrational states of being. I think as long as we can get to a place, again, I think neutrality is kind of where we're curious. We start to say, oh, there's potential, there's possibility. And then we move towards hope. And then we can move towards that experience of peace, sometimes moments of bliss. And so I don't think, you know, it's like, I used to do this with my clients. Gosh, this is like 25 years ago. When I worked at the mental health center, though, and I was teaching, I worked with paranoid schizophrenics. And so I was running a cognitive behavioral therapy program. And what we did is understanding the range of emotions, even for a single emotion that we would think just anger. If we take that as an example, we would use a thermometer, because even like to mark the intensity of anger, because there's agitated, frustrated, angry, furious, and enraged, right? So there's all these degrees and there's all these subtleties. So I guess I would invite people, number one of the things that and this is in my new book, we really talk about how to befriend yourself and how do you really grow that loving relationship with yourself? Because we know again, it's everyone's like, oh, just love yourself, be your own best friend. We know it's not that easy. 33 years in the personal development field, I know it's not that easy. My own life experience. So we begin by working on ways that we can befriend ourselves. And that literally is cultivating this practice where you show up for yourself every morning. And I have my clients track it truly with an old-fashioned calendar, where every day that they wake up and do this practice, they put a heart on the calendar because they've shown up and been loving towards themselves, which is literally saying, I've got your back. You're important. You're a priority. And we're cultivating that relationship with ourselves. We're learning how to trust us to show up for ourselves. And so I think, those are essential pieces of growing in these relationships. And so as we continue to practice, we're going to see that frequency shift. Again, it's not just a light switch. We don't just flip it and like, Mom, life is phenomenal. It's going to take that repetition as anything. And what a noble cause for us to take up our own cause, our own loving relationship with us. And that's an entry point. That's a portal to growing self-love right there.
I love that. Yeah. And recognizing, I love that part that you have to show up for your own body, for your own self. And if you're not willing to do that, then yourself or your body is not willing to show up for you. So you have to develop that relationship where you both support each other and you can journey together. And I think that's amazing. And I love all the things that you're doing. I mean, you're coming out with a documentary. And it may be that some of the viewers of this video, your documentary's already come out, but tell us a little bit about that. What drove the desire to create the documentary? It is called The Spark, right? Ignite the Spark.
It's When Sparks Ignite.
When Sparks Ignite. I
yes,
love it.
And it is out now on Plex Network on the More You channel. And it will continue to be available. Right now it's on premiere time, so you have to look. It's only available on certain days at certain times. Eventually it will be one of those where you just see the poster and you can watch it whenever you want. And right now, it's been so exciting having it come out. And I have to tell you, just last weekend, we were back up in Estes Park filming a new 6-part series for Plex called Becoming Fierce. So that all those sparks, it's interesting. That original film was before the pandemic. And yet the deep message of that film is your healing matters. Your healing matters. As each one of us do our inner work, we then become clearer conduits for more love and healing to come into the world. And, I had 11 other thought leaders and wisdom keepers, international presenters and best-selling authors and doctors and people in television and film and all these come in and share their pain. I mean, the first few days were us filming individual interviews and a time that the 12 of us sat around a round table, and we called it Lights of the Round Table. And again, this is before the pandemic, but truly what was coming out is the difficulties and the challenges that we face can then become the match point that ignites something within us that become our gift to the world. And on that third day of filming is when we did it in front of a live audience. So we had about 150 people that we then, through this amazing experience, these people usually are flown in, they spend 40 minutes on stage and they're flown out, paying tens of thousands of dollars to come speak. Every single person volunteered to come for free. Every person was so devoted to this message. And so we had our own experiences. We danced together, we sang together, we prayed together, meditated together for those first 2 days. And then when we brought it to the live audience, all the presenters stayed in the audience and just held space. I mean, really saying, we're all the same height. We're all in this together. So as one of us begins to heal and we let those sparks ignite, then we help others to do the same. And so that is really the theme of that movie or that film. And the new Becoming Fierce, it was a women's empowerment retreat. And again, all that planned before we knew all these things were going to be happening in the world. And it's really powerful. That one should be out late fall this year. And so with, again, the message, I mean, you see the transformation of these women. We had 20 women and 6 presenters. What a powerful thing. And so that's my hope, Michael, is that it gives people this window into themselves where they say, wow, I am going to show up for myself. I am going to do the work because I am one of the essential threads in this tapestry of life. So my well-being, my health, my mindset, it all matters. And I am going to do whatever I can to heal heart, mind, body, soul, so that I can be that conduit. And I am going to contribute whatever love and healing I can to the planet.
Love that. I love that. And each individual really don't know what their true journey is, meaning that maybe you're in a place where you feel that, I'm not important, I'm not loved, nobody knows who I am, whatever I do doesn't have an impact. One of the individuals that I've interviewed on these series, her name is Jane McLellan. She wrote a book, How to Start Cancer, and her journey of what she did in order to be able to survive cancer is now touching, I would probably say, close to millions of people. I mean, it's so you never know the importance that your journey is going to have, and it doesn't have to be that always that grand, but it's every little ripple that you create of just existing, of being who you are, truly are, is it's gonna shift energy in so many people's lives that you can't even fathom. So yeah, to be part of that tapestry of how we're all interwoven becomes such a key, and recognize your importance in that piece. I love that. I really love that. And it's so important for people, in this place, when they are battling cancer, to take this step. And I mean, your books are incredible. And I'm excited to see your new documentary. And it's so fitting for people going through the struggle, that they're going through.
Thank you. And you just hit it. I think, that's one of the things that I say is we never know the sparks we might ignite in one another. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've had a client come in and say, I was in total despair. I felt suicidal. And this random person said good morning and asked me how I was doing. And it shifted their entire day. So our contribution doesn't have to be, again, I think that was such an important point that you just made. We don't all have to go out and make films or write books or be on specials to be contributing. It's how am I showing up in the world today? How am I letting the light that is me shine through me so that I really am touching others' lives? I think that's imperative.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for everything that you are bringing to the world. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your light and love, and also direction for people when they really need it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.